Why are shiny Pokémon called shiny Pokémon? Shiny Pokémon were first introduced in Gen 2 with Pokémon Gold and Silver, but you probably already knew that because you're a smart egg. Ever since then, they have remained one of the most sought after encounters in Pokémon. But do you know why shiny Pokémon are called shiny? It may seem obvious at first, but after partaking in some oddish leaf and staring at the ceiling for a few minutes, one may begin to wonder how exactly they got that name. Shiny Pokémon aren't actually shiny after all, they just have alternate color patterns. Well, let's turn back the clock a little to when shiny Pokémon first started sparkling. Pokémon Gold and Silver had just been released for the Game Boy Color, and Game Freak put the new technology to use by giving every Pokémon an alternate color pattern. Back then, they weren't even called shiny Pokémon. Inside Gold and Silver's debug menu, they were simply referred to as rare. A year later, Pokémon Stadium 2 was released, and apparently in that game they were called Color Pokémon, a really creative and original name that they totally should have kept. It was around this time that fans came up with the term shiny, which was arguably a way better name. Basically, shiny Pokemon were named by fans because of the sparkle and sound that they made when encountered. Nobody knows who first coined the term, but since the internet was still in its early ages, it most likely spread naturally by word of mouth. Generation 3 added an official phrase for shiny Pokemon in the Easy Chat system, calling them alt-color Pokemon. This was a translation from the Japanese term for color variation. At this point in the franchise, the idea of Pokemon with alternate colors had been explored extensively, but still were never called shiny. It wasn't until Generation 4 that the Pokemon Company finally acknowledged the term shiny Pokemon. The term had become so popular by this point that official events had started using it, but it was still absent from Diamond and Pearl, and even Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Even though the Masuda method was introduced in Gen 4, the term shiny Pokemon was nowhere to be seen in the games. Finally, in Black and White, the term shiny Pokemon could be seen in the game, mentioned by multiple characters. They also added the shiny charm in Gen 5, making it easier to find shiny Pokemon. By this point, shiny Pokemon were a staple of the franchise, one of the things that makes Pokemon, Pokemon. In X and Y, encounter rates were increased by 50%, and more methods were introduced to make shiny hunting easier. But since then, not a lot has changed. Shiny Pokemon are a lot more common now than they used to be, but they still have a massive appeal to Pokemon players. Hope you enjoyed this brief summary of shiny Pokemon. See you in the next video.